All right, welcome back. Today we're digging into a real classic torts case, Brown versus Martinez. So, can you use deadly force to stop someone from stealing your watermelons? It's a heck of a question, right? And this case draws a really sharp, clear line between protecting your property and protecting people. So let's break down exactly how the court reasoned through this one.
So, let's start with the central conflict, the real heart of this case. Can you use a gun to protect your property from a teenage trespasser? I mean, this question forces us to weigh two really fundamental values: your right to protect what's yours versus the value of a human life. So how does the law even begin to resolve a conflict like that? Well, let's dive in and see exactly how the court handled it.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're going to break this whole thing down using the FROC framework, which is exactly the process you need to master. We'll start with the facts, the watermelon patch incident. Then we'll hit the central legal question, or the issue. After that, the black letter law, or the rule. Then we'll get into the good stuff, the court's analysis. And finally, the conclusion and your big doctrinal takeaway.
All right, first up, let's set the scene with the facts. Section 1, the watermelon patch incident. What are the legally significant facts here?
So, picture this. It's September 19th, 1954, around 9 o'clock at night. A 15-year-old kid named Brown and his buddies decide they're going to go steal some watermelons. The defendant, Martinez, hears them out in his patch. He grabs his rifle, comes outside, yells, and then he fires a shot. The bullet hits Brown in the leg, breaking the bones. Now here is the absolute key fact, the one that the whole case pivots on. Martinez admitted he only fired the rifle to scare the boys away. Remember that. He wasn't trying to hit anyone. We're going to come back to that in a big way.
Okay, so with those facts on the table, what's the actual legal question the court has to answer? Section 2, the central legal question. What's the precise issue the court must decide?
And here it is. This is the whole case in a nutshell. Did the property owner, Martinez, use a legally permissible amount of force when he fired a rifle just to scare away trespassers who were stealing his watermelons? Was that a reasonable, justified action, or did he go way too far?
So, to answer that big question, the court needs a rule to apply. And that brings us to Section 3, the black letter law. What's the rule the court is going to use?
So the basic rule for defensive property is pretty straightforward, right? A person can use reasonable, non-deadly force to protect their property from trespassers or theft. But everything hinges on that word reasonable. What does that actually mean? And the really crucial part of the rule deals with the limits of that force.
And to define that limit, the court pulls out the big guns, a quote from the legendary Dean Prosser's treatise on torts. And it says, "There is no privilege to use any force calculated to cause death or serious bodily injury where only the property is threatened." This couldn't be clearer. The law places a much, much higher value on human safety than it does on property rights. Full stop.
Okay, this brings us to the most important part of any case brief, the analysis. Section 4, applying law to facts. We've got the facts, we've got the rule from Prosser, so how does the court connect the two? Let's walk through it.
The very first thing the court does is draw this really critical distinction. Martinez never said he was scared for his life. He was worried about his watermelons. So this was a threat to property only, not a threat to his personal safety. And that, right there, is a massive fork in the legal road. If he'd been afraid for himself, we'd be talking about self-defense, which has a whole different set of rules and might justify deadly force. But since it's just property, the law says you can only use reasonable, non-deadly force, period. Force that's calculated to cause death or serious bodily harm is completely off the table.
And the court didn't just make this up on the spot. It looked back at previous cases to support its reasoning. This is called precedent. For example, in State v. Wagoner, the court had already said you can't try to kill someone just to recover property. And in State v. Beal, get this, it said you can't kill a fleeing person who just pulled a Halloween prank. So the court is showing, hey, this isn't a new idea. We are being consistent here.
Okay, but what about Martinez's big argument, remember? He said, "I didn't mean to hit anybody. I was just trying to scare them." That seems like a pretty decent defense, doesn't it? Well, the court has an answer for that, and it's a really important legal tool called the doctrine of transferred intent.
So here's how this works. Step 1, what did Martinez intend to do? He intended to cause apprehension, fear, in the other boys by firing that gun. That's an intentional tort right there. Step 2, what was the result of his act? He caused harmful bodily contact with Brown. So, step 3, the law says the intent to scare the other boys transfers over to the unintended victim Brown. So the fact that he didn't specifically mean to hit Brown doesn't matter. The bad intent just follows the bullet, legally speaking. And just to make this concept crystal clear, the court uses this classic illustration right from the Restatement of Torts. It's almost a perfect match for our facts. C throws a stone at A, which misses him. The stone strikes B, putting out his eye. C is liable to B. It's that simple. You aim at one person, miss, and hit another, you're still on the hook.
So after walking through all that step-by-step reasoning, the court gets to its final decision. Section 5, the court's final decision. What was the ultimate holding?
The holding is that Martinez is liable. The court reversed the lower court's decision, finding that using a firearm was improper force to protect property. I mean, firing a gun, even if you're just trying to scare people away, is just an unreasonable and excessive use of force when only property is at stake. The risk of something terrible happening is just way too high.
Okay, so what's the big lesson here? What's the one thing you need to take away from Brown v. Martinez and add to your doctrinal framework? This is the why this case matters part.
Here it is, the key takeaway. The law will always value human life over property rights. It's a simple hierarchy, and this case really hammers that home. You absolutely cannot use force that is likely to cause serious bodily injury or death just to protect things. It's a line in the sand.
And that leaves us with one final thought, something to connect this case to your next topic. How would this entire analysis change if Martinez had reasonably feared for his own life when he came outside? What if the facts suggested a real threat to him? Well, then the whole game changes. We're not talking about defensive property anymore. We'd be in the completely separate world of self-defense, and that's a whole different conversation.